folks, and welcome back to another edition of Money in Motion here. Joined today with Monte and sell-off across the board in the markets. So excited to talk about that and much more. But yeah, Monte, how you doing this morning? I like the Mr. Robot picture poster back in the back room. A lot of distracting, interesting stuff you got back there.
Yeah. Anything to keep your eyes off these ugly ass charts, right? Or my face, I guess you could say. Either way. Um, but yeah, plenty to talk about today. Market pulling back pretty hard, especially if you are focusing on the crypto related equities, which we do a lot and we have spoken a lot about. But for me, and we were talking about this briefly, CJ, before the show started. Um, I don't hate this price action because, right yesterday and, throughout the week, I had stated that, when it comes to the crypto related equities, I had kind of been flat after that big move to the upside. And we're approaching earnings in a lot of these big names. They're pulling back significantly. And I think we're going to get a chance to buy them lower. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Also, Bitcoin, it did sell off briefly. And like somewhat to like the 28, what are we at right now? 28.7 or 28.8. So like people are calling that a breakdown because we broke down below 28.7 briefly, but I still think that this is qualifies as like sideways range bound trading, and people that are going to try and short this in the hopes of it moving back down to 25k are going to be firmly disappointed. So those are a few things I want to talk about today, as well as AMD, which also has earnings after hours. But beyond that, looking forward to discussing some charts. But CJ, anything you'd like to start with, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, just to add on your points in terms of like the crypto equities, I was actually kind of concerned yesterday in the strength of stuff like, Coin and Mara and Riot and stuff like that. But it's nice to see, you know, those giving back a lot because those are things that I'm still very fundamentally bullish on, going in towards 2024 into the next halving cycle. So, the fact that we lightened up in recent weeks and now potentially have the opportunity to buy things like Coin lower and then hold them. I still will hold to that bet. If it goes to 300, I will shave my head. I mean, that's not even like I'm looking forward to doing that because it's an honor to Brian Armstrong. Regardless, that is one ugly daily candle that you have shown there, Monty.
Yeah, it certainly is, CJ. Almost as ugly as you'd be with a bald head, I think. No, I'm just kidding. I think you could pull it off. But yeah, this is a very ugly looking chart today. But like I said, I don't hate it, right? Because I've been wanting to get more exposure to Coinbase ever since we made that big move up. A lot of people talking about the fact that, or if you ever needed a better example that Coinbase and the crypto related equities are kind of serving as the altcoins for this part of the market cycle. Today's such a great example, right? Because we got Bitcoin, which, down 1.26%. That's average. That's a run of the mill day for Bitcoin. Nothing too exciting. The price action's all happening, and you can see it reflected in the volume as well. Like nothing crazy in terms of volume. All the price actions happening in the equity side of the crypto market. And Coinbase, Mara, Riot, all these charts look very, very similar in the sense that they had this sort of blow off top, reach critical levels, and then started to pull back. But I don't, like I said, don't hate it. Coinbase is the first one to have earnings. It has earnings on Thursday. I think that, there's no reason why they shouldn't beat on the top and bottom line. But even if they do, we've seen in the past, even when they beat like here, it didn't necessarily translate to immediately positive price action. But in other instances, like here, where they beat on both the top and bottom line significantly, that's what's really kind of kicked off, this positive price action. Also, that price action we saw in Bitcoin. So now that we're having some pretty strong volatility, I'm not going to buy today. Those options are going to be very expensive, but maybe wait for tomorrow, wait for this to settle down a little bit. And they'll still be expensive because of the fact that we have earnings on Thursday. So the implied vol is naturally going to be a bit higher, and thus you'll be paying a little bit more. But I think that now that we've seen an extensive pullback in Coinbase, I'm willing to take a shot to the upside on this one, especially with the catalyst of earnings on the horizon. But CJ, I'd love to get your thoughts on this one because I know you've been trading in and out of this one since all the way back in the beginning of June.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I've traded it too much. I've kind of, bought it a lot, and then just tried to sell it, namely after that 124% move.
That's called trading.
Yeah, I know. It's more of I'm thinking about it like a long-term hold though.
Yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah.
typically don't trade around those. Since I'm not looking at it compulsively, it doesn't feel like trading. Maybe that's more specific, but yeah, I'm looking at this. I mean, you look at previous support levels, you're looking at things like, 85, even 90, 75 maybe if we get there. But basically, I'm just looking at the most obvious support levels and looking like, okay, if we get bids that start coming in at those levels and see what looks like potentially a bottom is forming, then I'm going to seriously start ramping up the purchases of the coin shares. But we'll see if we're there yet. I don't know if we are. But yeah, I'm just going to buy a significant portion of my net worth is just going to go into Coinbase or various crypto equity. Once it looks like we're starting to put in a bottom, which I think we're starting to get there, but maybe not yet.
Yeah. And speaking
and if I could make one more point that you were talking about earlier in terms of like the crypto equities and how they're trading like altcoins, I think it's a beautiful thing when you look at the difference of price action and correlation between Bitcoin when you compare the altcoin market to something like the crypto equities, because the crypto equities trade way more in line with things like the NASDAQ and tech stocks. So even on days when Bitcoin's like flat and maybe some of the alts are bleeding, if the NASDAQ's up, like yesterday, for instance, was a good example of this, you'll actually see coin and some of the crypto equities positive and being helped by the NASDAQ and other tech stocks. So that relationship is like very important, and I think is one that will come back. And the other thing that I'm waiting for in terms of like a flip, like a switch to flip, is you have a lot of crypto natives. A lot of people, you think about your friends back in 2021 who were buying crypto, things like StormX, and I don't even want to go down the names of a couple of these. But my point is that what if, you ask like, what if Mara or Riot Coinbase seems uniquely positioned because everyone uses it. The brand recognition's already there. So, same type of thing, kind of like with GameStop, where you have like the meme stock potential there. So when I say flip to switch, it's like all those crypto natives who are only on crypto brokerages are probably going to have their first like experience with Robinhood or maybe a traditional brokerage to buy like a meme stock like Coinbase, because you can see right now it's not the same market participants trading these assets.
Yeah, it's most definitely not, and that's a great point. The crypto related equities, I think we're seeing like a new audience participate there. And that's what we've been talking about a lot is like, giving institutions, and not just institutions, but just, people in general, more legitimate vehicles of exposure to Bitcoin. And I think what we saw here during this run up was like a clear demand for institutional exposure to Bitcoin, whether that be because fund managers were underperforming relative to the S&P and they were looking for the highest beta assets available. Coinbase is a good place to look if you're looking for high beta, or crypto in general, right? So like we talked about the concept that, a lot of fund managers are still short, despite the fact that we've been up only this entire year, right? And their customers are going to be like, what the hell is going on? Why am I not printing money in this market that's been up only? Why are you trying to short this? So when CJ talks about flipping the switch, like, I think there's going to come a point where these fund managers realize, like, okay, it's either I get long now or I lose my job. And I think one of the best places to get long, and I think we're seeing it already, is these high beta vehicles like Coinbase or like Mara or like Riot. If you're trying to play the game of catch up, which is not a great game to play, I've found myself playing it before. You take a losing trade and then you want to make the gains back. Think about these fund managers that, like, they're almost 2 quarters behind now in terms of revenue generated for their customers. Like, they need to make some gains pretty quickly or they're out of a job. And
If you go like, sorry to interrupt, but if you have like a wealth management terminal with your, whoever's managing some money, they have like benchmarks, like specific benchmarks that they can
right,
be compared against that they've been underperforming for the past year, especially if their benchmark is the S&P 500, which is up 18%. I know somebody like it's a lot of these people are just sidelined and they don't know what to do now. And Monty, what I wanted to say earlier about when you said there's going to become a time where, they flip the switch, that particular point, in my opinion, is when the S&P makes new all-time highs. Because at that point, Horst said it a couple of weeks ago, and it was very well articulated. That sends the strongest message to the market that all the fund managers who have been sidelined for the past year are effectively wrong. New all-time highs, obviously, you're going to have the asymmetric liquidity, not people really looking to sell because there's no resistance. So yeah, I mean, that's the point in where, in my mind, the switch is flipped. Sorry to interrupt, though. Go ahead.
no, I completely agree with you there. I think yeah, like you said, Horse said that a few weeks ago, but I completely agree. When we see the S&P make new highs, like, what better signal than that? Like, what more could the fund managers want in terms of, we have FOMC behind us. People talk about the concept of an echo bubble and how Q1 was going to be, a big run up, and this is all just short covering. But eventually we're going to see spot buying and people, stepping back in. And I think that, CJ and Horse are exactly right. If we get a break above this 4,600 level here, I think that is when the fund managers need to be like, all right, I need to start aggressively investing capital into this market, or else I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to lose all my customers. So, completely agree with you there. And really, all I have is today one more thing to say, while we're talking traditional equities. Um, I did talk with some people in the Discord about this yesterday, so I'm going to go ahead and share it with you guys now. But I entered a small AMD position, just a spot position. They have earnings after hours today, but I like the possibility of them beating. Semiconductors in general have looked strong. CJ pointed that out yesterday. But I think that looking at, kind of previous earnings reports for AMD, also the current state of the equity market, and the role that semiconductors play. I know AMD does a lot more than just semiconductors, right? They don't even really do semiconductors. They do graphics cards and processors, but are heavily reliant on the semiconductor industry. I think that this whole AI wave is something that could potentially plausibly benefit AMD. We saw it benefit it, back at the beginning of May, but that hasn't really been factored into earnings yet, right? Like, it reacted very positively to this earnings report. There was no doubt about it. At first, we talk about this a lot, CJ, when it first, broke down and then it went up only. Then we had this jump here. This is when AI kicked off and Nvidia, shot up 120 points on the open. I think we could see a very strong move to the upside on earnings for AMD based on the fact that these companies that are utilizing AI need lots of processing power, and AMD is the second largest provider of graphics cards in the world after Nvidia. So, if you're talking about Nvidia as like a blue chip top 5 stock, I think we should also be looking at AMD as well as a possible shot to the upside because, personally, I'm a big fan of their equipment. I have used both AMD and Intel, AMD and Nvidia. I've done builds with both, and I think AMD is a great product for the price. And um, for some reason, Nvidia gets all the spotlight, but AMD, they make processors and graphics cards. So they're like a nice mix between Intel and Nvidia. And all of that is hugely important to this AI wave that we've seen. And companies like Microsoft, and ChatGPT and Apple and anyone else that's trying to integrate AI into their business model somehow, Google, they're more than likely going to need a lot of processing power. And I think that processing power is more than likely going to come from two places: NVIDIA, which is why it's performed so well, their graphics cards, and also AMD's graphics cards. I think those both will play a large role in the computational power necessary for this AI revolution to continue. So I took a bet on that one. I think it beats on earnings, and I think we see a move up to around the 120 level tomorrow at the open. So that's my only position really that I'm in right now, other than spot Bitcoin and spot ETH. But CJ, I will pass it back to you, my friend.
Yeah, we'll take a look at some charts. That's an interesting idea in terms of AMD because semis have been interesting.
What are you trading, my friend?
Not a lot today. I closed out a decent amount yesterday after I saw this. Hold up.
I already know what you're pulling up. Yeah, that was
All right, you can
concerning.
see this all right. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about like how China was breaking out and how a lot of this stuff looked pretty good yesterday. I still think things like Alibaba and potentially KWeb. Here, let me bring those up.
What about yen?
Oh, yen is
It's my favorite.
it was down bad today. Is rallying back a little bit. Maybe it's not over for the Chinese equities. It's not necessarily what I'm saying. I do still. I mean, when you look at the grand scheme of things, well, that's the log chart. So or the 3x levered chart. So it
Yeah.
doesn't give a true justice to what HSI has done in those years. But like, this thing's been beaten down. We're starting to rally. Could be interesting here. But yeah, either way, like we talked about getting long Babo and stuff. I've basically exited this position. If we make new highs and new momentum comes in, that's one aspect or one sector that I'm somewhat interested in. But like after seeing this yesterday and CNBC saying, when you say all clear for China, like that just makes me want to run. So that's what I did. Overall, fast money or fade money was very bullish in general, had a very bullish overtone to the show yesterday. So, one thing that I like to talk about a lot and something that's very important for the equity market that I believe in is that Monday and Tuesday are very important days. They have very interesting relationships with one another. Mondays, traditionally, you have the worst performing days for stocks. Tuesday are usually the best performing days of stocks. But moreover, I think that these 2 days kind of play around each other to a certain extent. And what I mean by that is when you have a really bullish day on Monday, or maybe even the previous few days have been bullish, sometimes Tuesday will be the opposite of Monday. And, if they're bullish or bearish, vice versa. Monte, you told me, or we talked about this, I think it was after an FOMC day, maybe a few months back, but we were bullish like Thursday, Friday, and then Monday. And you said to me, because this is when we first started talking about turnaround Tuesday, and you're like, all right, so are we going to have a turnaround Tuesday? And jokingly, I said, oh, no, it doesn't work like that. It only works to the bullish side. And of course, it was a horrible red day that Tuesday, and we dropped down, similar to today. So I think kind of understanding how Monday and Tuesday can kind of play against one another in the stock market is very important because there is kind of a psychological element to when people come back from the weekend and then once they like shift back into work mode. So, sometimes you'll see the opposite, and that's just kind of what I've felt and seen anecdotally. So I will be looking to get long certain things like Russell. That's been my favorite index as of late. but I want to see it make new highs or at least put in some type of like local bottom. Maybe we get an 11 a.m. turnaround here, but I mean, still pretty weak across the board. Dollar strong, you know, been an interesting trade there. Here, let me pull back up some of my charts.
Yeah, the dollar breaking above that 102 level that seemed like it had the potential to act as resistance in the interim, but smashing through that today.
Yeah. So, this was one that we were talking about in terms of like it did have potential to squeeze out a lot of shorts, and it seems to be continuing to do so. So just interesting price action there. When looking at the Russell, I mean, this is a very bearish engulfing candle, and this three-pronged resistance seems to be holding, I guess, at least for today. But if we start consolidating, if we have a little, some more bids come in, this is still a move that I want to catch, potentially a breakout from 2000 to 2100 in the Russell. If that comes, I'm going to be there to catch it. But at the same time, there's no need to rush into anything. Grains bounced back a little bit, but still nothing too exciting there. Bean oil has just not really given you a chance to short it following yesterday, but that one has just been in a tremendous downtrend, and so that could be interesting to do the start of some new bearish trend following. If you look at these three previous lower highs, also there's a ton of like trapped longs from like basically the high right here that have been getting squeezed out the past 2 days. Let's see what else is there.
CJ, one thing that, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. This is an open discussion. I'm just ranting. Please interject whenever you'd like to. What do we got?
We got a question from Richard in the chat here. DeFi summer soon, gentlemen. And I think it's an interesting question because, we've been talking a lot about the analogs between what we're seeing now in terms of crypto price action and what we saw in 2019 in terms of crypto price action. What are your thoughts on the possibility of, a DeFi summer, or where do you think that could plausibly take place if we were to see something of a similar magnitude to 2019?
Well, I don't know if you're ever going to see anything quite like 2019 specifically for DeFi again, because that was like the future before we knew it was just exploits and this nonsense like what we're experiencing with Curve. We weren't even initially going to talk about it, but Curve and that whole situation just kind of doesn't make DeFi look particularly good, especially since Curve has been one of the most well-regarded projects in the space, up there with the likes of Aave and Uniswap. In terms of like looking for DeFi summer, it's at least when you look at stuff like Uniswap, like, I mean, what is this up from? It's up from 4 to 6 or 3 to 6. Like a lot of this stuff is already really moved. Curve might be interesting today because Justin Sun was buying literally from the founder to sell so that he could pay his loans, I believe, for some like $50 million house or something ridiculous. GCR is also too rumored to have bought some of his wallets in terms of like buying CRV. So perhaps this is an interesting long-term buy for Curve given the recent remote event risk if Michael from Curve doesn't actually get liquidated. But as for like the DeFi industry in general, I just don't think it's something you have to buy, or it's not something I would buy right now, because I think in general, the industry is kind of boring, aside from like a few select assets like Rollbit, which I don't really want to buy, or like Bald. Like I don't have the energy to go bridge to something that will probably get me exploited, that doesn't have a front end.
You don't have the emotional energy anymore for that?
I did in like 2018. I was hungrier in terms of like where you'd put your capital and where you'd risk. Now I just want to take risks in like TradeStation or in a regulated place where if I lose the money, it's going to be my fault, not the bucket shop that I entrusted. Um, so yeah. But to wrap up the point in DeFi, I just like I want to see Bitcoin going up first. I don't want to buy altcoins in the hopes that they can, perform well if Bitcoin's not going to be. Typically, the most powerful opportunities to make money in the altcoin markets are when we see rotations of capital from risk on in Bitcoin to then ETH to Solana. Maybe it won't be Solana. It was last time in the beginning of the Echo bubble, but I want to wait for that rotation of capital. And right now it seems we're at the end of that rotation of capital. So we need a new circle to begin, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. That's exactly what I was going to say as well, is like, and we've been saying this all week, all month, really. It's like there's no new money coming in. It's everyone cannibalizing each other. Um, and essentially just like it's just this same pool of capital moving from asset to asset to asset. We need new money flowing in, new capital flowing downstream into the alts. That's when typically we see that DeFi pick up. Right now, we're just not getting that. Unfortunately, there's just no new money flowing into crypto specifically. Crypto related equities is a different story. But like if you look at Bitcoin, if you look at ETH and their relative trading volume, like month over month, it's down substantially. And that is cause for a little bit of concern and leads me to believe that we could see more sideways price action in the near future. So, yeah, hope that answers your question, Richard. But that's all I got, CJ. Anything else you'd like to add today before we wrap things up?
Nah, I mean, I'm kind of just observing a lot today. There's always something you can trade, right? So I think I'm just kind of chilling for today. But I mean, I always will let you guys know if we do trade anything or if we post any ideas. They're always going to be in chats in our Discord community. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content today. That helped us quite a bit. And check out tradethechain.com for a 14-day free trial for crypto sentiment indicators. We're working on some equity indicators as well that we can share in a bit. But really excited for that, and encourage you guys to do that. You can talk to us in Discord with a community of traders all throughout the world as well. So appreciate it. Hope you guys have a wonderful day and a good start to the rest of your week. And we'll see you back here next time tomorrow.